Wait.
Yeah,
Yes,
now it's
now it's
okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
Is
it's
it
good now.
okay? Okay. So
Yeah,
as part
good,
of our
very good.
house rules, okay, thank you. As part of our house rules, please turn off your microphone so that we'll be able to share everything to you. And if you have questions, kindly scribble it in our chat group, okay? So, okay, my discussion this afternoon is all about the role of Tibet schools in bridging the gaps in workforce development. So, this lecture will have this outline. So we'll focus on the following areas. I think someone is turning on his microphone. Can we ask that person to turn off the microphone, please?
Yeah, now it's okay, madam.
Thank you. So we'll talk about demographic changes. We'll talk about the gaps. And we will see how Tibet can be a game changer and work towards sustainable development. And we will try to look at some promising practices of Tibet around the globe. So let's get started. Let's talk about demographics. According to the United Nations Department of Economics and Social Affairs, by 2030, the global population is expected to reach 8.6 billion. And the youth population will reach more than 1.3 billion. This means there's going to be pervasive unemployment, underemployment, and longer school to work transitions. In another data published by the International Labour Organization, there's around 267 million young people with the age bracket of 15 to 24 who are not in employment, education, and training, and many more endure substandard working conditions. According to the UNESCO strategy for Tibet 2016 to 2021, the rising youth unemployment is one of the most significant problems facing economies and societies today in the whole world for developed and developing countries alike. Attaining decent work is a significant challenge for the youth. Despite progress and economic growth, inequalities and poverty remain a problem in many parts of the world. In the said study, over the next decade, there's going to be 475 million jobs needed to be created in order to absorb the 73 million youth currently unemployed. And there's going to be 40 million new annual job entrants to the labor market, with 1.44 billion workers worldwide under the vulnerable employment. Furthermore, the study showed that on the average, for countries which data is available, the wealthiest 10% earn 30 to 40% of the country's total income. By contrast, the poor, around 10%, only earn 2% of the total income. In terms of global unemployment rate, you will notice in this slide that there's a disparity in the percentage between women and men. So if you look at these statistics, you will see that men have higher employment rate compared to women. Men is around 5.7, while women is around 6.4. And also in the global workforce percentage rate, there's a higher percentage for men compared to women. So there's a disparity in terms of, if you look at this data. So you might ask, what are these trends for? What's the relationship of these trends to Tibet? Well, these trends are affecting us. It affects all regions, set the context of education for training today and in the future. A selected number of global drivers of change are considered here, like supply and demand challenges, education attainment, commitments to inclusive growth, demand-oriented challenges of globalization, technology, innovation, and climate change. In the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, did the demographic change? Yes. According to the ILO COVID Monitor, it was published on April 2020. The full and partial lockdown measures are now affecting almost 2.7 billion workers around the globe. That's 81% of the world's workforce. In this current situation, businesses across all regions are facing catastrophe. That is in terms of operations, in terms of solvency, and the most affected are the smaller enterprises, while millions of workers are susceptible to income loss and layoff. The impact on income generating activities is very harsh to unprotected workers and to informal economies. If you look at this figure, this shows the impacts of recommended and required workforce closures. You will see that this is very high. The lockdown continues to severely impact enterprises and workers around the globe. Look at the percentage or share of the world's employed living in countries with recommended closures. It's almost more than 80%. And also, the share of the world's employed living in countries with required workplace closures is also high. And the share of employed living in countries with required or recommended workforce, excluding China, is also high. So with these trends, how are we going to survive as a TVET institution? So there's around 68% of the world's total workforce, including 81% of employers and 66% of own account workers living in countries with required closures. Another figure would show that this data is really high. You will see that the table for this one shows employers in countries with recommended closure. So you will see this is the scenario for the employers. The first one is the scenario for the workers. And these are the employers that's affected. So it's really close to 100%. The most affected of these closures is the United States of America and even Europe. And these statistics still not include Asian countries like us. So if you try to include other numbers, I'm sure this will be blown out of proportion. This table shows us the share of the world's own account workers living in countries with closures. So there's similarities. If you look at the work closures have severely impact enterprises and own account workers, and their current operations leave them at higher risk. Higher risk, and it's still uncertain. This table shows us the impact of the crisis on enterprises. So these include employers and own account workers in the hardest hit sectors. So you will see in this table, look at the table, you will see that wholesale and retail trade, repair of motor vehicles and motorcycles, the impact is really high. Manufacturing is also high. Accommodation and food services is high. Real estate, businesses, and administrative activities also high. In the area of the arts, entertainment, and recreation, it's medium high. And in the transport, storage, and communication, it's also medium high. A continuation of the table would show us that if you look at education, the impact is low compared to other sectors. So agriculture is also affected, mining, quarrying, financial insurance, construction. Only a few sectors has low impact. So that is health, social work, education, utilities, public administration, defense, and compulsory social security. So the ILO estimate that there's going to be 1.2 billion workers, representing about 38% of the global workforce, are now facing higher risk of work displacement. These key sectors like the retail, accommodations, food service, and manufacturing. So if you've noticed, there's around 47 million employers. This represents 54% of the employers worldwide. So the hardest hit, again, it's the manufacturing, it's the tourism industry, it's the transportation industry, it's the real estate industry. So more than half of these enterprises are really struggling to survive. So taken together as a whole, you will see that these sectors are more than 30% of our GDP on the average. So are you wondering, what does this data tell us? It tells us that the global pandemic impacts not only our health, our lives, our economies, but also more so the labor market and the education sector. For the record, more than 1.2 billion children and youth were unable to attend schools and universities. This is speaking of 186 countries placed on lockdown or partial lockdown. So this is really trying to impede our normal ways, our normal processes. So the next question is, are we affected by the COVID-19 pandemic? What's the relevance of these data analytics to TVET schools and to the future of work? These data can be useful to us, school administrators, principals, managers, in making better decisions. These data allow us to look and study the trends, see the range, make inferences, and predict short-term and long-term outcomes. But before we do that, let us first do a self-check. Let us identify what are the gaps in terms of TVET or VET education. This slide will show you the 4 issues that most of us are familiar with. These are the gaps. Number 1, skills mismatch. Skills mismatch has been an issue ever since. This is the gap between the individual job skills and the demand of the job market. It has become a challenge to TVET providers ever since. And a lot of models have been tried and tested that this issue can be resolved. Next, lack of awareness. Lack of awareness on the real value of TVET or VET creates a stigma. It's really deeply rooted in many countries, in the culture. There's really lack of appreciation in terms of vocational education and training. And even if we focus our efforts in trying to rebrand, in trying to convince the young people that VET is a very good option, the culture itself is trying to kill us and is trying to dominate the mindset of these young people. So we move forward to stigma. The increasingly stigmatized and undervalued VET education has been there for so long. And the notion that someone who cannot push through college education is really a pressing issue, because you will be tagged as someone who is less intelligent compared to someone with a bachelor's degree. So the role of the VET graduate is portrayed as someone who's stereotyped as just a second option, or someone who's just plainly a B, not an A. So there's no sense that if you have all these medals, there's no sense that you will enroll for VET because you need to get a diploma and you need to finish your college degree. The last issue is VET is the last resort. VET is always viewed as the last resort for students because some of them or many of them would say that their families, their parents cannot afford college education. So they would prefer to do VET courses rather than do college because they have no money. So it will always go back to the issue of poverty. And these gaps has been there, and this has been a sad reality. So looking at these gaps, how do we change the course of the game? As TVET schools, how do we play the game? The ball is now in our court. What is the role of TVET schools in bridging the gap? I believe that TVET schools can be a game changer. What does it mean if you're a game changer? So it means that you can, as a TVET school, you can strive to be good, be better, and be the best provider amid any crisis. You might ask, how are we going to do this? How can we be game changers? Well, the first thing that you need to know is we need to know how TVET can be a game changer. What is a TVET game changer? A game changer is one who's experiencing big impact. That's what you call a game changer. If you're a game changer, then you experience something so big and so impactful that it changes the landscape. Being a game changer is that moment when you see something that others don't have. It's that transformational magic that makes any TVET organization exceptional. So meaning to say, you're not an ordinary TVET school. You are different. So, is it possible for TVET to be a game changer? Yes. So what are the things that we need to do? First, we need relentless pursuit. TVET schools need to have relentless pursuit. Did you ever wonder why there's a thing called big idea? Big idea is not a miracle. The best leaders, TVET leaders, proactively focus on pursuing game changers. They are never satisfied with the ordinary or mundane. A lot of leaders recognize that their big ideas didn't just get lucky. They committed to constant pursuit of game changing. They are not dreamers, they are doers. So for successful TVET leaders, if nothing is persistent, then you are not committed to really changing or being relentless in your pursuit. The second thing is being original. One of the things in today's marketplace that's wrong to me, in my opinion, is rehashing of old ideas. TVET leaders aren't copycats. You have to pursue game changing. Have no patience in the status quo. You have to shatter the status quo. You have to allow your organization to change, to adapt to something new, to stop bureaucracy and change the norms, break the conventions, encourage diversity in your organization. The message here is very simple. Do not copy. You have to create. Don't just play the game. You have to change the game. The goal is to create, to improve, to innovate, around best practices in order for you to find the next practices. The third one is develop a clear purpose. If you're a TVET leader, you have to have a purpose. If you're not aware of your purpose, and if you're not self-aware of your purpose, then what's the point of you being a TVET leader? You need to be aware of the emotions and needs of others. You need to be aware of what's going on in the marketplace. TVET leaders need to have a refined blend of intrinsic curiosity and extrinsic focus. Game-changing leaders, you have to have greater purpose. They have to understand the value of serving something beyond themselves. So as a TVET manager, you should focus outside of the box. You don't stay within the confines of your school. You have to go out. You have to experiment. You have to learn emerging trends, just like what we're doing right now. For the past several weeks, we've been quarantined. We've been staying at home, and yet we're trying to diversify. We're trying to develop a purpose. And our purpose is to learn, to exchange ideas, to find out what's going to be the next wave of TVET, to find out what's going to be our next game. And if we create a real game for TVET, I'm sure there's going to be more purpose, more service, and more inspiration to the young ones. The last one is TVET schools must be smart. Smart with an S. The meaning of smart is simple, meaningful, actionable, relational, transformational, and scalable. So let's start with the S. Simple. While not all game changers is simple, the best one are usually simple. According to Albert Einstein, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it enough. Right? So if you cannot explain simple things, meaning you cannot understand it yourself. So in most cases, you have to be simple. Your idea should be realistic, it should be cost effective, and it should be fast to implement. You don't need to entangle yourselves with complexities. You have to be simple and invest in simple ideas. Next one is meaningful. So as a game changer, you need to have a great purpose. You need to solve a problem. You need to serve an existing market. So if you will go back to the analytics that we have presented, what do you think will be the problem of vet schools after the pandemic? What will be the existing market? Can we create a new one? So most leaders, unfortunately, are stuck with majoring the minors. Some of the leaders would look at the minor details and they fail to appreciate the greater purpose. So it's not a game changer if you're doing that. Why do you need to waste your time in looking at the minors when you have a macro purpose, when you have to do some bigger things rather than focus on smaller details? The next one is actionable. So if your idea never gets off the drawing board, then you cannot be a game changer. If you cannot turn your idea into innovation, if you cannot put it into practice, then you're not a game changer. By definition, you have to do what is required of being a game changer. So there's action. So your ideas should exist, they have to have life, and they should not lurk in the shadows of mysterious things. They need to become reality. The next one is relational. So being a game changer is also important to leverage on relationships. So when you are in a vet school or in a business in school, it always boils down to people. So you have to value your employees, your customers, your partners, your investors, your vendors, the teachers, the parents, and the students. Because people mean relationship. And real game changers understand the power of people and relationships. If you forget the people, you cannot be a game changer. T is for transformational. It means that a game changer causes change. If nothing changes, if nothing is created, if nothing is improved, if nothing is transformed, then you're not a game changer. The lesson that I learned a long time ago is that it's very simple. You cannot experience sustainable improvement or development without change or without transformation. There must be a change. The last one is scalable. You cannot be a game changer if your idea is not scalable. So your idea must offer hope that there's going to be a solution. It doesn't turn into a nightmare. Your dream must be fulfilled and it should be shared to others. So it should be sustained, it should be shared to others because it's scalable. So these are the important things that we should remember for us vet schools to be game changers. So try to internalize the meaning of SMARTS and try to apply this in your own institution. So now we go to the next slide. This slide presents us a model. So this is an industry anchored model shared by TESDA Regional Director Gaspar Gayona. This model starts with industry profiling and proceeds to industry academe TVET partnership and moves forward to recruitment and then competency-based development. And the last one is job matching. And the cycle goes on and on. In the next slide, you are looking at the strategy model. I developed this model because I find it simple. I can understand it at the first glance. So similarly, the model starts with industry and it moves forward to training and certification. And the next one is endorsement or job placement. The last model is connectedness. I developed this model to show the connection and interplay of stakeholders in the successful implementation of TVET programs. The difference here is shown in the engagement of a lot of sectors. We have here the industry, the school, the local government, the national government, non-government organizations, people's organization, and the community as a whole. But let us remember that there's no perfect model. This model may work in our situation, but it might not work in your own country. So you have to create your own model. Do an experiment. If it's not working, then you can revise it. Do it all over again. Because models are there for us to become intelligent managers, and they allow us to make better decisions. So if we have a TVET that is a game changer and we have a very good model, then we can have this outcome. We can deliver better outcomes with higher employment rate. We can spur economic growth, and there's going to be better revenues for our countries. So that being said, it's very simple. If we do our thing, then we'll have this outcome. So now, let's discuss what are the success factors of TVET schools as game changers. So you have to really listen very carefully to these factors. These are very important factors. Let's go through it one by one. First, cooperation of government and industry. By working together, the state and industry can secure basic conditions under which vocational education and training can take place. These range from sharing funding to developing and implementing curricula, and can extend to testing and certification. In Germany, for example, the state is organizing establishment of dialogue forums. What are these for? These dialogue forums allows the school, the trade and industry, the social partners, and the civil society to reach an agreement in matters pertaining to the development of training occupations. Employers and trade unions cooperate in developing minimum standards for the in-company element of training. These are coordinated with the curricula of the school-based part of VET, for which the individual federal states are responsible. The next factor is learning within the work processes. The aim of vocational education and training is to create comprehensive employability skills. A combination of learning within the real work situation and school-based learning is the best way of developing the professional. Active learning within the work processes is the most effective and most efficient form of VET training. Instead of engaging in more in theories, our trainees, our students need to be exposed to the realities of working life, because trainees learn their occupations in authentic work situations, of course, with the support of the training coordinator in the industry. This enables them to learn on a step-by-step basis on how to do the responsibilities inherent in the workplace. So in the Philippine context, there's a lot of schools who's really struggling in terms of learning within the work processes, because there's some companies who wouldn't allow in-company training. So there's always limited number of exposures for students to be immersed in the requirements of the industry. So this is still a work in progress. The third one is acceptance of national standards. So intercompany occupational standards and uniform examination standards guarantee quality of qualifications. Comparable training qualifications and certificates form the basis for employability, mobility, and social acceptance, and foster lifelong learning. So qualifications need to be comparable. This provides workers with high degree of mobility and enables companies to conduct efficient human resource recruitment. Standards create transparency on the educational and labor market, and they facilitate the further development of qualifications and permit cross-sections between educational pathways. So training regulations ensure that VET is of the same quality in all companies, in all regions, in all schools. That is the reason why we have this framework, PQA. We have this framework so that we can have our reference for qualifications for each countries. The fourth one is qualified vocational education and training staff. So this is also important because this will show us that there must be a coherent skills combination of a quality of a teacher and a skilled worker in the same person. So it should be an integrated VET concept that requires teachers and in-company trainers to combine the qualities of being an educator and a skilled worker. Because you cannot be a VET teacher if you don't have no experience in the industry. It's just like barking on a wrong tree. You need to have a rich academic exposure and at the same time, a vast experience in the industry. So this shows that VET requires a holistic learning and teaching process. So you need to have a very vast experience of the industry for you to train your students. You cannot be a qualified teacher in the VET if you don't have this vast experience. The next one is quality assurance. Quality assurance is also important because if we don't push for quality assurance, then there's no time for us to monitor errors and, of course, to improve. Quality assurance is a very ticklish issue because there are those schools who don't do quality assurance. They just do their usual thing and they are not after quality. But for vet schools to really excel, you need to have quality assurance. So quality assurance has been discussed for several weeks now, and I'm sure that everyone is really familiar and you have already learned a lot from our previous speakers about quality assurance. The last factor, which to me is really important, is research and consultation. Educational labor market research enables us to adapt to any changes to meet the technical, economic, and social development changes. So educational labor market research provide us most important impetus for developments in terms of the demand in the labor market. So labor market research observes and analyzes the development of the labor market. This is about the occupation, the trade, the industry that's going to be in a short term of time or in a long term projection. So this factor investigates the impact of labor market, not only in a few countries, but in the world as a whole. So this provides us the foundations for planning our decisions. And this involves a lot of preparations. So this is the reason why I shared the demographics, I shared the data analytics, because this will help us. We need to make decisions after the pandemic. We need to draw out our short-term and long-term goals. So you, as a vet leader, as a manager, as a principal, you need to do market research for you to make intelligent decisions. You cannot make better decisions if you're just playing the game without looking at important details. So that's the reason why we started this session with the demographics. At this point, if you have any questions, you may scribble it in the chat box and we will answer it later after my presentation. Moving forward, there's a very ambitious goal for UNESCO strategy for TVET. So this goal is for education and training as central to the achievement of the 2030 agenda. So the 2030 agenda calls for an interdependent goal of or approach in trying to eradicate poverty, in combating inequality, in preserving our planet, in creating inclusive and sustainable economic growth, in achieving full and productive employment and decent work for men and women, and in ensuring gender equality and fostering social inclusion. So these goals are independent. You cannot take it in a micro level. You cannot separate one. You have to take it as a whole. So at the same time, this strategy is aligned with SDG goal number 4, which is to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong opportunities for everyone. So the UNESCO goal has 3 pillars of priority areas. So the first one is fostering youth employment and entrepreneurship. The second one is promoting equity and gender equality. And the third one is facilitating the transition to green economies and sustainable societies. So fostering youth employment, and entrepreneurship means that UNESCO will support member states to conduct policy reviews and TVET reforms. So to me, these are ambitious plans, but we are very thankful that UNESCO is trying its best to really create a strategy on how are we going to achieve the 2030 goal for education for the TVET sector. But again, the question is, can we achieve the 2030 goal? The second one, UNESCO will mobilize cooperation of different stakeholders. So when we say mobilize cooperation of different stakeholders, this will involve all sectors. So it's not only educators. This will involve the industry and a lot of sectors that can help in the attainment of such goals. The third one is that it will support member states to design efficient and effective funding strategies. So, like for example, if your country doesn't have enough funding, you can check out the site of UNESCO. There's funding opportunities where they can help your institution. The next one, which is really interesting, is promoting equity and gender equality. Some would say this is a dream, but to me, this will become a reality. So the first one is that they'll be doing policy advice and capability programs. Next one is that they will promote targeted policy measures for disadvantaged groups. UNESCO will encourage exchange and dissemination of knowledge and will support measures enhancing women and girls' access to relevant TVET programs and equal opportunities. I just want to share in this pillar that our school has been promoting gender equity and equality. So every year, our school is targeting 60% of our beneficiaries should be women, single mothers, women from disadvantaged sector. And we've gone a long way in trying to promote gender equality. And there's a lot of success stories that would tell us that if we empower this disadvantaged sector, then we can really achieve gender equality and equity. The last one is facilitating transition to greener economies and sustainable societies. So this one is also a work in progress to me because this will take a lot of efforts, especially to us TVET providers. So we will promote green skills for smooth transition to greening economies. We need to foster cross-sectoral approaches to TVET and support member states to leverage on digital technologies and close the digital divide. So we need to collaborate. Each countries we need to collaborate in order for us to really help push for this dream. We need to transition to green economies because we need to protect our planet. Because if you can see based on our own experience now, this has something to do with how we live. The experience of the pandemic has something to do with how we live and how we have used our resources, or rather abused our resources. So if we transition into something that is better, then we can change the whole thing. That is, if we have this political will. At this point, this will be the last part of my presentation. I just want to share some promising practices of TVET in different countries. So I will share the experience of Australia, India, and Germany. These are best practices were called out from the UNESCO Unibook. So if you have some best practices that defines or shares promising experiences on TVET, you can upload your practices in the site and you can share it to other countries. So let's start with Australia. So Australia, though they have a well-established apprenticeship system, they also experience a decline in their enrollment rate. So they also have this negative perception on apprenticeship. So what program did Australia implement? They implemented the Australian Apprenticeship Ambassadors Program. So the goal of the program is to raise the status of the VET program. So they recruited prominent figures and high-performing apprentices and trainers as ambassadors. These ambassadors did showcase the apprenticeship system, and this worked well with them. They have more than 200 active ambassadors. So these ambassadors are promoting via social media their best experience about VET. The next one is in Germany. The Germany federal government launched the recognition in Germany. This is a portal to improve labor market access for people from migrant backgrounds. So the multilingual portal provides users with information about the procedures for recognition of professional qualifications acquired outside of Germany. A pathway towards professional recognition is beneficial both for migrants in their job searches and for the German economy, which continues to face skill shortages. The portal also supports the staff of recognition, counseling services, job centers, and employment agencies in their daily work. The last promising initiative is that of India. They call these labs empowering rural women through ICT in Tibet. In India, according to the said best practice, women from rural communities rather, often have little say in family and community decision making. Skill development is recognized as a medium of empowerment. However, access to technical, vocational, and training remains a challenge to majority of those living in rural India. With the goal of empowering women, Amachi Labs offered a program that uses innovative approaches and modern technology to overcome the obstacles of rural women. And then they deployed the mobile vocational education van. This is equipped with ICT tools for education. So, as a result, this lab has helped 27 villages in 21 states. And this program has provided thousands of women with practical skills that have enhanced their earning potential and increased their capacity to participate in decision making in their families and in their communities. In conclusion, I just want to throw this question to everybody. Are we ready for tomorrow? Are we ready to transition to the new normal? My call to action is, let us destigmatize TVET. We can do this. We can stop the stigma. If we change our mindset, if we innovate, if we push for quality and excellence, if we become global citizens, and if we engage and collaborate. These are the only ways that we can eradicate the stigma. I believe that if we put our acts together, we can really do something good, do something better, and be the best TVET school in our region, in our country. So what are the key takeaways in this webinar? First, TVET as game changer. Second, TVET for sustainable development. Third, TVET for global collaboration. Let me end my presentation with this quote from Dr. Gaspar Gayona. Let us build the bridge as we walk on it. Thank you, and I hope you learned from this session. Thank you very much.
So, Dr. Christine, can you
Yes,
go through the chat box for the question and answer?
yes, sure.
There are so many questions, but you can answer few of them, but you can go through the list of questions
All right.
in the chat box.
Okay. Mm-hmm. What are major factors for skills gap? So I have mentioned this question is from Abdul Hashim. So Abdul, I have answered these factors. You can refer to my slide. So the sales gap is would always be down to the way we deliver our programs, the way we prepare our curriculum, the way we package our services. So let you as a vet school, you really have to start with the industry because the industry will tell you what's the skills required. You don't start with your own standards because your standards may not suit the requirements of the industry. So it's always important to consult the industry. How can how can we join online courses of ICT skills for teachers? Engineer, I think this question is for Colombo. How can they join online courses of ICT skills for teachers? Okay.
Please, Dr. Christian, you can go to the next question.
Yeah. So as okay. Please explain how skills mismatch is reduced. So I have already answered this question. To what else? Bridge the gap. Okay. Do you think that a separate manpower setup is required for minimizing gap and change? What do you mean by manpower setup? Dr. Majuder, are you there? I just want to know what do you mean by manpower setup? Okay, there's another question. How can TVET graduates have their courage and confidence in terms of competing with those who had their bachelor's degree? Um, there's a lot of ways where they can develop their courage and self-confidence. Let me cite some examples. We have a lot of vet graduates from our school who can perform beyond the performance of those with college degree. Because in a vet-oriented industry, they're not after the degree, they're after the skills. So when a company is more focused on the skills, then these vet graduates can really gain a lot of recognition compared to those with a college degree. And they can really perform well. That's based on our experience. So another question is, how can we make effective bridging to minimize gap? So I've answered that already. Okay, this one is interesting. How do we increase or ensure higher employment of TVET graduates? So you can only ensure higher employment rate for your graduates if your curriculum, if your training delivery is calibrated with the industry standards. Because if it's not, then your graduates will not be able to pass the requirements of the industry. So you should remember that your role as a TVET ends when they graduate, when they have their certification. However, if you are a game changer, you should continue by trying to help your graduates get employment. So to ensure that they get employment, you have to have an industry partner. So your industry partner will play a bigger role in trying to calibrate not only your curriculum, but at the same time, your trainers. Based on our experience, we have a number of industry partners. And in a certain program, these industry partners has been engaged in our programs, not only in the hiring process. They're engaged in the calibration of our trainers and also in the calibration review of our curriculum. So if there's any changes in the requirements of the industry, we have a point person who's going to cascade this information to our trainers, and we will do the necessary calibration and review of our curriculum. So that will ensure that all our deliveries, training deliveries is really at par with the industry standards. So that will ensure higher employment rate of our TVET graduates. Okay.
Hello, Lakshmi, Jaya Lakshmi, please mute your mic.
And now it's okay. Dr. Christine, you can continue. Dr. Christine, do you hear me? Please, you can continue.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Please continue, doctor.
Okay. So there's a question about quality assurance.
Yeah.
If he was asking if there's a need for all these things to be implemented in a school. Yes, I believe the importance of quality assurance is really essential. You know, if you don't have quality assurance, then you cannot evaluate if your program is doing good or not. So you really have to have a quality assurance team. Like in our experience, we do have a quality assurance team. That this team is always checking everything from the implementation of our program and in the middle of the implementation. So it always starts with a plan. You have to do the plan, you have to execute the plan, and you have to monitor and evaluate. So that's the key role of the quality assurance team. They see to it that everything is quality assured from start to finish. Okay, so next question, how can we change the mindset of people, especially Filipinos, that vet plays a very important role in society here in the Philippines? So as a TVET school, you need to be a game changer. That's what I'm sharing. You can only change the mindset of people if they see that vet is working, that TVET graduates are successful. So based on our experience, what we are doing is we're improving the branding. So you need to do image building. So if you have the proper branding and you have to and if you have the image building, then this will change the culture. This will change the mindset of Filipinos that that is not a last resort. It plays an important role in a society. Because if you look at the pyramid, if you look at the statistics, you should see that majority of people are below, are in the bottom. So this means that these people really needs our intervention. So if we do the necessary intervention, then the ripple effect is that we can change the landscape. We can change the mindset. We can change the attitude of Filipinos. That's why we are always showcasing best practices. So that's the point. You need to share best practices. You need to share promising initiatives for Filipinos to change the way they look at BET or TVET. Okay. There's another question. Okay. This is a question from TESDA, Regional Training Center, Tacloban. The biggest problem that we institutions in remote areas are facing now is the involvement of the industry. Yeah, that's what I've mentioned. Here in the Philippines, industry are mostly found in growth cities, which is the result of migration of our graduates from provinces to cities. What is the best strategy to link the school with the local industry? So in here, we go back to the factors that I have mentioned. The important thing here is you do your market study. You do your labor market study. Like in Tacloban, for example, what is the existing industry? And you also need to consider the talent pool. You have to check if you have the talent pool for such industry. And another thing that you can do is you do market study in the regions that's near you. What do you think are the things that they're doing that they can attract investors? You need to prepare your talent in order to attract investors. And you need to have an ecosystem that is really friendly to these investors. The thing is, like, for example, I'll give you an example in the IT industry. So in the IT industry and in the BPO sector, there's four areas that you really need to consider. First is the pool of talent. These investors will locate in your areas if you have available talents. So talents, when you say talents, it's not just a few, it's by the hundreds. So if they see that your province or your region is not prepared for this, then they will not invest in your region, in Tacloban, for example. The thing is, you have to also have a very good local government. The ease of doing business is really important. So if they have this credits, like for example, in investing in your area, then these investors will consider locating in your areas. And you should also consider that in the latest pronouncement of our president, that was, I think, yesterday, he is trying to campaign for Balik Probinsya. This means that all of the migrant workers in the bigger Manila will be offered this work in key areas and they need to go back to their provinces. So if you look at this to many, this is a problem, but to me, this is an opportunity because these migrant workers from the bigger Manila, they already have experience in many industries. And this is your chance to promote your province or your region to investors who would want to go out of bigger Manila, who would want to invest in another city or in another province. So I hope I answered your question. Okay, so there's another question. Would you please let us know how we can attach with sustainability and TVET? So sustainability is not should I say it doesn't happen in a day. It should be consistent with your plans. So your school or your programs will be sustainable if you have a model. So you need to have a model to reach sustainability. So planning is really important and execution of the plan is really important. So you really have to do your mission vision and you need to align that in the niche of your school. So again, you need to be a game changer. You have to create something new. So if you think that you're already crowded with this kind of course, then you need to do a market research because it's always a must that you do market research and you offer something new, because when you offer something new, then you will have a lot of interest from stakeholders. Okay, so this one is with regards to COVID-19. How do you think the role of TVET in COVID, how to support when building the bridge that we walked on it in COVID? Interesting. So the role of TVET in COVID is really huge. If you look at the statistics, if you look at the analytics that I have presented, you will see that there are those industries that's highly affected by the pandemic. And you will see that there will be some emerging sectors. There will be some emerging industries. So this is your time to plan. Like for example, the hardest hit is the tourism sector. So you think, is it practical for your school to continue offering tourism? You think you need to shift your mindset, or you need to take another to invest in these courses? Another is in terms of health. In terms of the health industry, you will see that there's going to be, if we look at the current situation, you will see that there's going to be a huge demand for health workers. So this is an opportunity in the midst of the pandemic. So you can offer courses aligned to the health industry. And also, you can also try to look at the information technology, because information technology is labeled, is tagged as an essential industry. So if you look at the impact, there's no huge impact to me because the business is still as usual. The call centers are still doing business. So it only shows that their operations was not impeded by the pandemic because these sectors continue to thrive. So as a school, you have to study after the pandemic, how can you survive? Because we're really affected. So at this point in time, you have to think of ways on how to adapt to the new normal, because the new normal will require us vet providers to change the way we look at things, to change the way we implement our programs. So if you look at a very simple protocol like distancing, so the required distance would be 2 meters away. So if you're going to adapt with the new norm, you have to set up your laboratories that there's the required distance for your trainers, for your students, and for your staff. So these are simple matters, but it will require a lot of preparations. And even TESDA is already trying to do a survey if there are schools who have already stopped their operations because of the pandemic. So we're really affected by the pandemic, all of us. Okay, so another question. So what is your idea regarding interlinking of TVET schools in bridging the gap in the workplace? So I've mentioned it, and again, I just want to share the importance of establishing relationship with the industry. So you can only bridge the gap if you have established a very good relationship with the industry. So the only way that you can establish a good relationship with the industry is to engage the industry. I just want to highlight the difference between involvement and engagement. When you're involved, of course, you're there. You may believe or you may not believe, but when you're engaged, when you engage the industry, it means that from start to finish, they're there. When you start your program, you consult them, you try to let them know the curriculum, and in the course of the implementation, you're there with them, you try to scrutinize, you try to learn from each other, and at the end of the training, they're still there. It's an ongoing relationship. So you don't just connect because you wanna endorse people, but you have to engage and to build a relationship with the industry. That's the only way, that's the best way that you can bridge the gap in the workforce requirements of industries. Okay, there's a question from Bangladesh. Please give some advice to our Bangladesh on how to improve our VET. Okay, so again, we go back to the 6 factors on how to improve your VET programs. So you have to really consider that there are important factors for you to improve your VET program. So first is that you have to cooperate with your government and your industries. So you need to work together. Your government, your industries need to work together so that you can develop a very good training program, because this will in effect result to sharing of funding from the industry or from the government. And you can also help in like cooperating with your government in terms of testing and certification of competencies of your graduates. And second one is that you need to learn within the work processes. So this is the importance of trying to link with the industry so that your graduates can have employable skills. And the third one is that you need to be at par with national standards. So I'm sure Bangladesh has its own national standards. So you have to check on that so that you'll maintain same quality with other regions, with other countries. And of course, the qualified training staff is also essential. So your staff needs to have a combination of uh, learning and teaching skills, and they have to be immersed in the industry. So these are, and also quality standards is important, and also research and consultation. The last one is research and consultation.
Okay, thank you, Ma'am Christina, for excellent presentation, and I think you covered almost all questions. On behalf of Colombo Plan Staff College, we would like to thanks for your valuable time and great, professional inputs to our distinguished TVET experts around the globe. And on behalf of Colombo Plan Staff College, I would like to express great congratulations for your excellent presentations, and thank you for your time once again. So see you again. Thank you very much. So
Thank you very much as well. You're
thank
welcome.
you. So I am not presenter, even though there are 3 questions for me. One questions, I'll try my best to answer these questions. One questions is from, I think, Mr. Mohammad Yusuf Ali, maybe he's from Bangladesh. He has asked how to assess quality assurance in TVET against industry standard. I think, Ma'am Christina already covered many things, even though first, if you are talking about the quality assurance things, you must have quality management system in your institute. First things is that quality management systems covers many things. We already explained many times, so no need to take care. Like, you have to do whatever you have to do in your institute. You have to plan, you have to do, you have to monitor and evaluate, and you have to provide feedback, like PDCA. That is called quality management system. And for implementing quality management system, you must have a quality management team. Quality management team means you doesn't require additional workforce, but you have to assign available teachers, available staff for the quality management review process. That is the major things. And then your program should be demand driven, like what industry is. She talked many times, Madam Dr. Christina already talked many times, there should not be gap between supply and demand, because TVET institution is a bridge between the rivers, like Podda River or Brahmaputra River in Bangladesh. In one side there is an industry, another side there is a, let's say, students or somebody who wants to come for TVET institutions, and you are playing the role of bridge. So you have to connect 2 edges of the rivers. That's why your role is very important. So if we do not visit industry, and if we do not know what is happening in the industry, and if we are taking like a fresh university graduates as a teacher, maybe they don't know what is industry's requirement. That's why exposure to them and recruit teachers having industry experience is very good approach to minimize the gap between demand and supply. That's why for quality assurance, there are, like in every country there is an internal quality assurance mechanism. Similarly, like Asia Pacific Accreditation and Certification Commission, we are doing also international accreditation. So you can visit Asia Pacific Accreditation and Certification Commission website. You can find quality manual there. Then based on that criteria, you can apply in your institutes. First, if you want to, conduct like quality assurance of your programs or your institute, first, you should be a game changer, as Dr. Christina mentioned. You have to take lead role of game changer. Nobody will come. Industry will not come to you. Because if you are thrust, you have to identify the water tap. That's why, if we feel we are the TVET institutions, we are big boss, we are government, high officials, no one will come to you. You have to go, because we have to produce workforce as per the requirement of the industry, because ultimate employer is them. That's why that is very important. Hope I covered your questions. And there is another questions from Sekawat Ali sir. He asked, how can we measure the skills mismatch? I think she already answered many times. The measure the skills mismatch means, like, whatever competencies or whatever curriculum competencies are listed in your curriculum, that is one side. Or what are the competencies your graduate have acquired, that is one side. And another side, what are the competencies industries are looking for, like particular occupations. That's why the demanded competency minus available competencies in your curricula or with your graduates or your students or your teacher. That variation is the skill mismatch. That's why what are the competencies, skills required by industry minus what are the competencies you are imparting to your graduates through your curriculum or national competency standard. The variation is the skills mismatch. So you have to assess that mathematically I told you. And there is another questions from the Majumdar, Dr. Majumdar. From which level we can introduce vocational educations? I think if you ask me, we can start vocational educations from grade 1, but level will be different. Like in grade 1, instead of giving a story of some like a politician, you can start a story of a successful TVET graduates, a plumber. You can give a story of a plumber. You can give a story of a chef. Like in grade 2, grade 3, grade 4, grade 5, grade 6, up to grade 8, you can start some awareness. You can build in some knowledge part, motivational part, awareness, knowledge about the vocational educations and what are the success stories of vocational education. Instead of giving some history of a person's like, politicians, we can give the history of the vocational graduates. That is also kind of vocationalization in education. So gradually we have to impart, like gradually, in my suggestion, hard skills regarding like technical hard skills, we can start from after grade 10 only. That is my suggestions. But up to below grade 10, you can give more soft skills, more awareness, some vocational skills, importance of occupations. These are the things. So you can start your vocational education from grade 1. Don't worry, but level will be different. So that is my response. Hope there were 3 questions for me, and thank you for that questions and very good questions and professional questions. Most of the questions our resource speaker Dr. Christina already covered. Once again, thank you our resource speaker for her valuable time, and thank you for the all very attentive learner despite in this age. Most of them are very senior, even though they are demonstrating highly professional learners attitude. We have to salute all of them, and thank you very much. Have a good weekend. See you next week.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
very
sir.
much.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Over you.
Thank you very much for answering my question.
Thank you.